I'm Andrew Murata, host of the Education, Leadership, and Beyond podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you are listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
All right, folks. Hello. It is the High Tech Podcast. We are here. I am one of your two co-hosts, William Illingworth, joined by Joshua Swartz. How you doing, Josh?
That's me. I'm doing great.
We did it. We actually did just like an intro. We just said hi.
Yeah, we just came in. We gave the podcast title. You know, we just told you now that we like to talk about ed tech. If this is your first time listening to us,
that's what this
podcast is about. Yeah. We kind of ruined it by breaking the fourth wall like immediately by how excited we were that we introed.
we just don't really have a thing. I still don't feel like we have a thing. But
yeah,
like,
I don't. Yeah,
we started. We're in. We're going.
Yeah, we're here. We don't need a thing.
Here's a thing. This is episode 115. This is the end of season 4. We're very excited for season 5, which is next week. We'll talk more about that later.
Yeah.
But as we're ending our 115th episode, our 4th season. Wow, this is proving more difficult to think through.
This is a tongue twister.
Thank you for joining us along the way. We, Josh and I, are just thrilled with how far the podcast has come, with how it continues to grow, people subscribing, engaging, et cetera. So please do find us on YouTube, find us on your favorite Spotify or podcasting app, and engage with us, connect with us, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. We have one at this time in history, August 15th, 2023. We have one review. We have a review of the podcast.
We do. We have a review. The funny thing about the review is we have a review and it's from 2022. We didn't know that it existed. It's been on Apple for a while. We didn't know that we had a review. Yeah, thank you.
But that's really helpful for the podcasts in general. So please do leave a review on your favorite platform for us. We appreciate that. As we're rounding out this 4th season, we're picking up more and more momentum with the podcast. We're going to keep going with season 5, a whole new series in season 5, some more guests, some more ideas, just new, fun. Let's keep this going. So thank you for joining us and keep joining us.
That's actually the title of the first 5 episodes of the new season.
Thank you for joining us.
First episode, no, new, and then fun. That's you just got the first several episode titles of the High Tech Podcast. I will say, for those who are interested in what could be coming in season 5, we'll promo more things, but there may be a Ted Lasso thing popping into the new season.
I'm so excited.
I know Robin was just telling me, for those who don't know, Robin is a friend of ours who's been on the podcast, a coworker of mine. She was telling me today she was a little behind on the pod. And then I remembered she loves Ted Lasso. And so I just thought I'd let you know, I told her about the Ted Lasso thing we're planning, and she would really like to be a part of that Ted Lasso thing. So don't even forget to put her name in the notes, because she looks like she might murder me. If I don't include her on that series. In fact, I'm gonna go ahead and do that right now while we're talking. Anyway, Will, what are we talking about today in this said episode?
This is a weird topic. This is something that I've actually kind of kept in the periphery of the podcast. This is a topic from before the podcast was even recording, and we've literally ignored it.
This is an early podcast topic.
Looked around it, like when Josh and I were looking at this, we just laughed. Like, we wrote this idea down before we even recorded one of our first episodes, and we've just never gotten back to it. So here we are. What is backchanneling? We want to answer the question of backchanneling, what the value of backchanneling is.
When you passively aggressively talk about a friend without them knowing, right?
Behind their back.
Yeah, behind their back. No.
Oh, that's not too far off. Minus the passive aggressive side. Functionally, backchanneling is simply talking behind the main conversation. Like, literally, if you're in a Zoom, chat is back channel. If people are talking face to face, using the cameras, and someone's chatting on the side, that is a back channel. That is practically what's going on. If you're in Discord, if you're in Slack, right? If there's a general channel, if there's open channels, and then there's private channels where just like a smaller subset of people are. If there's maybe a conversation going on in general, but people are talking about it in a private thread or a private DM, that is a back channel. So there's a functional thing, right? It's got to be like the secondary communication line, and there's kind of a social thing. It's got to be happening while something else is happening. So one of the first.
Sorry, I was gonna say, put it in context for people who might not be as familiar with it. If you've ever been in like a webinar or like a Zoom thing, and there's like a chat tool where you're all like, saying who you are, making comments about what the person's talking about as they're talking, in an area, that would be I think a really practical example. A lot of us are probably familiar with today of like a back channeling setup.
Right. And sometimes that back channel, like there's literally like a bunch of if this or that kind of decisions.
Decision
back
tree,
channels
you might
can
say.
be, oh yeah, there's a word for that. Decision tree. The decision tree for back channeling is actually practical, functional, helpful, or distracting, useless, bad, right? Like back channels already at the very top of things can go either of those ways, right? A back channel can be, so the presenter, in Tanks 101 talks about this really cool element about how tanks barrels work and how they fire ammunition. And a back channel conversation that starts up at that same moment is like, oh, I wonder what kinds of ammunition are used in tanks, right? Like, so the conversation, the lecture is focused on the barrel, but like a quick back channel conversation is like, well, but I also wonder what happens with the ammunition. This is an example of a good back channel. We want this to happen maybe because it's relevant. It's not the exact conversation, or it's not the exact point of the immediate moment in the lecture, but it's relevant. And maybe it's next lecture's conversation or something like that, right? Like it's not, ammunition is going to be relevant to the barrel at some point in a tank's conversation. What would be bad is the lecturer is speaking about the length of barrels and how barrels work and rifling on tanks and blah, 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 blah. And the back channel starts up with like, do you think the professor's wearing a toupee? That is a less helpful back channel. Both of these happen. Both of these back channels happen, but the comments about the toupee, the comments about social environment, the comments maybe in a back channel, like, oh, is it hot in here? Like people are chatting each other. Is it hot in here? Oh, it sucks. It's so hot. Right. Like that could be educational. That could be useful if the professor's made aware of the environmental issue impacting learning. But, people who back channel, especially if there's privacy, may have those conversations about toupees. The professor's got something on their shirt.
This toupee thing feels too real for you to have not been a part of that conversation.
I don't know what you're talking about. That's not a real example.
This just seemed like anyway. Okay, so we're gonna play we're gonna play a little game. Okay, we're gonna play a game. We're gonna call this I don't know. I need to come up with a segment title for it or something. Like. It's just devil's advocate. That's it. Okay, I'm gonna pretend. I'm gonna pretend to be a faculty member. Okay, I'm gonna pretend to be a faculty member. Let's pretend my name is Schmitty. Okay, so I am.
Continue, Professor Schmitty.
I am Professor Schmitty. Okay. My question would be, how does even the example you gave us the positive? Okay, I get that they're talking about the tank content, right? Or whatever content you're talking in the class. You may not be teaching Tanks 101. We know it's a popular course, but you might not be teaching it. But my pushback would be, how is that also not distracting? Like, what if that distracts the students from what the professor or whatever's going on in the class at that time, or the question or group activity, whatever it may be.
Yeah. Oh, it is. I will not deny that back channeling is what I would call structured distraction. Like one of the things that I think is important about back channeling is, unless you have no digital tools in your classroom, and even then you can't you cannot separate students from each other. And so like before we know this, before technology in the classroom, like what did you do? If you wanted to send something or say something to somebody, you had to like try and whisper it so the teacher didn't hear. You had to write a physical note and like throw it to their desk while the teacher's back was turned. Like
Yeah.
learners were still doing things to talk to one another
Okay.
while instruction was happening. It just wasn't digital. It was harder to do. The quantity was less. I think in a traditional classroom, I do think that backchanneling is a tool to be measured and to be
Okay.
watched for, because it can be distinctly distracting. But like one of the things that I mentioned already, and that should be a potential benefit out of it, is okay, if I'm hot, but I'm willing to suffer it because I'm hot.
Oh,
But if I know
that's the
that
direction
you're
we're going.
hot,
Okay, sorry. I was like, whew.
temperature.
Somebody's full of himself on the high tech podcast today.
I am not a narcissist in general. I'm a little bit of, everybody's a little narcissistic, but
Yeah,
I'm
everybody's
not
got
going to
narcissism.
do that publicly on our podcast. So I'm just the most hot person ever. I believe I'm so hot.
It's okay. I knew what you meant. I'm just being a jerk. So
Thank you. No, we needed a couple of laughs in the episode, right?
Temperature, if you will.
So if I'm a student, I'm thinking I'm hot, and I know Josh is hot too because he's sitting right next to me. But like, what if the whole room's hot and no one's willing to speak up about it because no one knows that everyone else is hot? There's a reverse herd mentality here. Like, oh, I don't want to say anything because it might just be me. If there's a back channel happening, people can connect and people can share quickly. Like, dude, is it hot in here? Yeah, it's hot in here, and everybody agrees it's hot in here. Like, someone might actually raise their hand, stop the professor, and say, can we turn the heat down or whatever, can we address the environment? Yeah. That's a very basic, or if you will, benign example. But like, hey, what if I'm that more introverted student? I'm not going to raise my hand, but I do want to know, isn't the size of the ammunition relevant to the size of the barrel on a tank? Like, isn't there a correlation? Yeah. Why, well, now if we've got a couple people talking about that in a quick chat or a side chat or a doc or whatever, maybe that's a question that someone else is willing to raise. Like, oh, if all 5 of us have this question, let's raise that and actually interject. And that could help that person who's not willing to ask the question have kind of like a group support and ask it. One more strategy I think that's involved in why I think this back channeling is a good thing. Back channeling doesn't just have to be like a literal chat. It doesn't have to be kids like texting under the desk, right? I've seen a very practical use of this where it was a structured element of a course.
Okay.
Students were taking notes, and a couple students were friends or whatever. This happened. This is a real example from a faculty member.
Yep.
Some of them knew each other, and in the first day of class, started a Google Doc to take notes together. Oh, this is actually a back channel as well.
Yeah,
right?
Co-note taking in class. Yeah.
Right. Because they're taking notes, so that's actually the first or practical activity. But it's a Google Doc. They can talk to each other. Like it is a back channel. And the faculty member became aware of it at a later time and was excited by it. Like, wow, they tried to cultivate that. They encouraged it, and more students got involved, and students were co-creating their notes together for the whole semester.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily something that's going to work if a faculty member just assigns it. It was a very natural and organic thing. I'd love to investigate that more. Like if a faculty member, if a teacher, if you're listening to this and you want to try this out, like talk to me. I want to be a part. I'd love to source the idea with you. Or go talk to an instructional designer, instructional technologist at your institution, at your district. But that's a back channel that is not like just chatting on the side, right? They were doing something. They were practically engaged in the lesson. They were practically engaged in the learning. They were focusing on the teaching. They just did it together. So I see back channels as kind of those 3 prongs, right? It can be something that gives a space for, students to deal with like more introversion and quieter people and like finding some groupthink stuff. It can work through like, maybe this is actually a more relevant question than I thought, like bringing something to the front of the class. Like it doesn't have to stay just in the back. It can come to the front if people agree. And lastly, like a co-created or co-shared space where the learners are directly engaging in the learning while note-taking, building, listening, learning, whatever. Yeah.
So and like to be honest, I'm not really Schmitty. Okay, first of all, My name is Josh.
Not Professor Schmitty.
I am not against backchanneling. I can see where backchanneling, you have to be careful of how you utilize it. Like, it's not one of those things where we just say like go full ham. Mainly because
Right.
we're not in the 90s anymore and people don't talk like that. But the
Savage.
I do, apparently. It can be, it's a double-edged sword. But like, for instance, co-note taking, like I'm planning on doing that in the course I'm teaching in the fall. Is opening that space for students to do that. Like, I'm going to have preset notes that they have, like just notes that could be helpful. But like, my plan is to put it in a shared doc that, like, yes, if you don't want to take notes with other people.
Are you doing it in Notion?
I really want to, but I don't think I'm going to require students to make a Notion account. I'll probably still do it in Microsoft Online, which is what our institution supports. I really want to do it in Notion. Like really bad. But I'm doing Word Online because it'll be easier. Because what I'm allowing for is like students who don't want to do that, you can just download the version of the document, like the notes, to your own computer, and you can take your notes. Like, you don't need to.
You don't have to share.
Yeah,
you can do it on.
So, but I want to do that shared note feature because a lot of times, like the way notes work with people, one, I like giving the outline and part of the notes to students because I still don't buy into this whole like, if they handwrite their notes in class, they'll know stuff better. There's people who keep like trying to really support that, and there is some support to say when you handwrite stuff, you learn stuff differently, but you don't when you're multitasking while trying to listen to someone or do something in class. So there's my soapbox for a hot second. But co-notes, I really like the idea because I've been in classes before, I've done that before, and one person will catch something that I might not, or they'll word something differently, and so you got a lot more content. So that's a perfect example of where like backchanneling helps support. I will say this, I really see backchanneling as a really helpful support in online space, especially when you're over like video conference tools and things like that. There's a lot of times where that backchanneling can actually help you as an instructor. Like, for example, I was in a real situation like this, teaching over Zoom on doing some stuff, and I mentioned something in the class, but one of the students couldn't, like, there were a couple students who were struggling to find it, but they didn't want to admit that they were struggling to find it because that would be awkward in the Zoom thing. So instead of being confused the whole time and not being able to see what I was looking at, one of the students reached out on the chat that I didn't notice at first that that's what they were doing, and another student dropped that in for them in the chat. I've also seen in those situations where there can be fun conversations going on between people in those chat areas. And while you may consider it distracting, I do think, especially in a video conference solution, it helps students engage in a different level. Like, let's be real here. Professor Schmitty, okay? Or any other professor listening to this right now.
Hustle up,
Schmitty.
Come in
maybe
here, Professor.
Dr. Batgirl.
Yeah.
None of us are fun enough that that students love listening to us the entire time on Zoom. Okay? Right. So, like, they're going to get distracted anyway. They might as well get distracted with a chat that's related to the course, the content that's going on, right? So I fully support that. I do that on Zoom calls all the time. I'll be in team meetings, and, you know, me and a couple other team members are chatting, and we're chatting about stuff that's going on in the meeting. It's not like we're not listening.
If you're in a meeting with more than 3 people, 2 of them are talking to each other.
Oh, 100%.
Like, in my opinion, if it's 3, there's like enough of a like, no, we're not going to talk about each other. Like 3 people. But if it's 4, there's 2 people who are talking.
Oh, 100%. There's we used to have a game for a while. This isn't related to this. We used to have a game in our backchanneling, me and 2 other coworkers, that we would try to get each other to laugh during the meeting. Like, we wanted to see the other person break, like, to know we had broken them.
That's mean.
I don't remember what it was, but they broke me at one point, like at a horrible moment. I was supposed to be about to start presenting something. They broke me hard. Like, I forget what there was a GIF involved. There was some extreme sarcasm. It was a whole thing. Anyway, that may all seem like the I know certain probably professors and people from backgrounds who would look at that and go, that seems like that's going to be a distraction. That's not, it's going to get what I want. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, if the students are engaging each other about what's going on in class and also having fun in the class, like, as long as it doesn't get out of hand to the point that, like, they're not engaging and they're not being a part of what's going on, that helps students be more relaxed. It helps students engage better if you can leverage that well, especially in digital spaces where it's so hard to connect with people sometimes, even on a video conference call, when you're on like Zoom or Google Hangouts or Meets, whatever they call it now. That you need something like that to keep some of that engagement. So I'm in total
creates a
support of
social
it.
space.
Yeah, it creates a social space.
This
And
actually,
people
back
benefit.
channeling is directly associated with third spaces, right?
Yeah.
Like a back channel is a
Mhm.
third space. We've done an episode on that in the past. Josh
Yeah.
will be looking that up and giving us a number in just a
What?
second.
I don't
But
understand.
like the fact that you're leaving space for this, allowing it, gives the students space to express themselves, be seen
Yeah.
and be heard, potentially connect with their peers.
Yeah.
Those are all good things.
And create better connection in the classroom, like especially in an online space. I would
Right.
encourage that back channeling because it's so difficult to get the students to connect with each other. So it creates a camaraderie in that area, and I think that's going to be better for the whole course overall, whether it creates a little bit of distraction or not, your video call or your teaching session. Yeah, I think that's helpful. If anybody's curious, it's episode 7. That was a super callback.
Whoa.
Episode 7 of the High Tech Podcast. We
Third
talked about
spaces
third
was that long
spaces
ago?
and Discord. We shared about Discord, which is another app that Will and I love. I might say is better than Slack. And by might, what's my hot take? I think I like it better than Slack.
Okay, we're gonna have to put a pin in that for a hot take. Wait a second. What?
Anyway, that might come up in our next episode. Anyway,
all right. I'm gonna go work out. Get ready for that fight. I mean, I love Discord. I also love Slack.
We use it all the time.
I love both of them.
Yeah, it's fine. It's I just choose to love one more than the other.
Yeah, Josh is that parent that doesn't have favorites in his kids. Wink.
Oh,
doesn't have favorites in his kids.
Be honest. Anyway, so we talk about Discord on that, but third space is a similar idea. The only difference between third spaces is you're not doing it in a live situation. Third space is you're creating a space within the course that's not necessarily like an academic discussion or something like that, but a place that students can socialize, interact, collaborate, things like that. That's a third space concept. This idea is having basically a back channel for that to happen during live type of situations, whether you're in class or you're in Zoom or you're whatever you're doing. I think you just have to carefully evaluate what type of that you'd want to leverage and whether or not that would be distracting. There are probably some courses where you're doing enough collaborative work with each other. You're doing breakout rooms. You don't need a back channel. And it might get in the way to have that back channel. Well,
and one of the things I want to say to this is if you're concerned for back channeling, if you're on team distraction, you don't think that it's as effective, you think that it's going to distract the students from your content, et cetera, acceptable. I'm not here to tell you it's not going to distract students. It is functionally a distraction.
Oh yeah, 100%. That will happen.
Someone in that category may, with Zoom, for instance, turn off the chat in their meetings. I knew faculty who would do this. They turn off chat in their meetings. I think that's pretty counterproductive. 2 reasons. One, chat is very helpful for technical troubleshooting. If you can't hear someone, if you can't see someone, if it's not recording, right? Like
that was my immediate reaction.
You need chat. You need chat for technical purposes, typically. But 2, if you close, this is like here's the headline for the clip now, right?
Okay.
Students are cockroaches, right? I'm telling you, if you try and keep the students from using chat to communicate, they're gonna use something else. Like if you want to play the game of eradicate all of the back channels, I think we should. Frankly, I think we should.
It's 100% correct. I mean,
they're gonna do something. You might need to text each other.
Yeah,
they're going to email each other.
Find ways to do it anyway. And if you think it's not happening, you're wrong. Like I don't care.
Right.
If your syllabus says don't make it have devices out in the classroom, they're there. I don't know where they could be anywhere. And this is where I'm rhyming apparently now. That's how passionate I feel about this.
DJ Swartz is in the house. This is where I think the conversation for back channeling really does need to take a moment and spend the moment on an analysis of audience, right? A kindergartner is not a 21-year-old. There are certain parallels, but alcohol is usually involved with a 20-year-old to make it like a kindergartner, right? So much
happened in that statement.
When you get halfway into a metaphor and you're like, maybe I shouldn't have said that.
Maybe,
Whatever.
maybe we're committed.
It's done.
You light the fire, you watch it burn down.
K-12 is going to have a different focus use of engagement with backchanneling than higher education. Higher education is going to have a different engagement than corporate, right? So in corporate education, I actually am involved in workshops, live sessions, trainings, right? And so we have 21 to 81-year-olds on Zooms doing trainings of every level capacity, from engineering to personal development to social skills to whatever. I'm working on it. I'd love to have a tanks class.
That would be great. I think it'd be great.
But like in corporate education, right? You're not going to stop those adults from having a back channel. You can't. There's no way. 100%. They have so many tools. They have their own agency and fiat. They're not in an environment that says you must bend to my will. Adults in corporate learning are going to have a back channel. You can't stop them. They will do it.
Might as well leverage it well then, if that's the case. The funny thing in life, this is another hot take, is that us adults seem to really like to outlaw things from kids that we're totally comfortable with doing ourselves.
Boom.
And so if you're totally fine having that chat, faculty member, on my session about how to do the LMS.
Oh my God. I don't have a mic to drop.
How dare you try to stop your students from doing the same in your situation? Now, you may think your content's more interesting, which it might be. Canvas is kind of lame. But the idea is you
can lasso this.
Yeah.
Let's Ted Lasso this, right? Let's be a little curious. A faculty member, why do you message your peer while the president's in a Zoom talking to you, or while Josh's team's on a Zoom talking to you? Why do you message your peer? You have a question.
Yeah.
You have a funny, quick thing to share.
Something that's beneficial that you don't want to bother the entire group with because it's not helpful. Like I'm making a joke. I'm being, obnoxiously sarcastic about the how dare you thing, but I don't care that you have a back channel. I have back channels during every session that I am in, like 100%. I am doing it. I might even have a back channel when I'm teaching. I don't know with who, but
I have a back channel while we're doing this right now.
Yeah,
we message each other, write notes to each other.
I totally get it. At the end of the day, though, if that applies there are benefits in your class and your situation. Now, that is, again, all to say, I understand wanting to be careful about how we approach it. It's not something that just, I think you can set guidelines for your students on how you want stuff to happen. Like Will said, you don't want it to get into the distracting conversations that aren't helpful. His incredibly, obviously hypothetical situation about the toupee. Clearly that didn't happen in real life, folks. Yeah, for sure. That might have not been the best conversation, but like a perfect back channel would have been Will and I were in college once, and what was it? You said what was the word you said in that class that like none of us understood?
Carte blanche.
Carte blanche. Yeah, we all were like Googling and chatting with each other about what the heck did Will just say. Like that's a perfectly fine example.
Some of it was said out loud, but yeah,
some of it was said out loud, but we worked through it. The point is, I think it could absolutely help in online space, especially if you're doing video conferencing and stuff like that. Consider figuring out a way you could leverage that well. If you're in a classroom, there are ways for you to leverage it well. If you want to try actually encouraging your students and setting up a system for them to take notes together or have that type of system for chatting and things like that, I say give it a try, see how it goes, and play around with it a little bit. That's my encouragement. Dig that back channel, if you will. Give it a little dig.
Give them space. Just let them do it. Let them do it. You're not going to stop them, but encourage them. I procrastinate. Right? I procrastinate all the time. I'm a procrastinator, but I also participate in structured procrastination, right? Structured procrastination is when I procrastinate by doing something else I do need to do. Not just like twiddling my thumbs, right? I will do structured procrastinations like, I don't want to do that task. So let me do this task instead. It's still both work.
Baldur's Gate 3 instead. It's like,
no, that's not what I'm trying to suggest.
No. Listen, I get work done in that game. I'm just saying.
Good for you. You dropped it. You got the name drop in. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. Just try.
You know what I mean? But like structured back channeling, like give them reason to do it. Tell them to take notes together. Encourage them to ask each other questions that they can ask you. Like whatever it is, let them know it's okay. Encourage it to happen so that it does go more in the positive than
Exactly.
the potentially distracting or potentially negative space.
Mhm.
Like, we're the teachers. We get to set the pace. We get to set the tone. We get to model the best behavior.
Mhm.
So model it. Show them how to do it. Make it effective.
Yeah, exactly. I've been trying this entire time to think about how I can transition into the app.
No, I got it.
never made
Dang it!
got
Why'd you say
got it?
anything? I had
Sorry.
this.
Never mind. Rewind it back.
Should I just edit this out? No, I never edit anything. Josh, do you know Dragon Ball Z?
Do I know Dragon Ball Z? Oh man, Vegeta and I go way back. That's all I gotta
So
say.
you know the character that is his name is Piccolo.
Of
He
course,
is
the green guy.
he's Namekian. He's a Namek.
Yes,
Namekian.
as
He's the
everybody
green people
knows.
type.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, clearly.
And there's a character that he reports to and they engage with named Kami. Kami is it's one of the first, like, they did a joke on us puns that I've ever was interacted with, like, as a young person. Kami means God in Japanese, and Kami is a god-like character in the Dragon Ball Z
It's
series.
a little on the nose, if you will, but that's fine.
So that gets me to Kami, which is our app this week.
That was your epic transition. You made me feel bad about
Kami
ruining
is
your
the Japanese
transition.
word for God, and let's talk about Kami, the app. It's spelled exactly the same way. I don't know why we don't know the origin of the name Kami.
No,
but,
I don't know the name.
it is
I'm
spelled
still,
the same
I'm still
way.
stuck on this. I'm still stuck on this not transition. Like
This
I don't worry.
anti-transition.
I've got a great transition. You know how we've been talking about back channels? Do you remember Dragon Ball Z? The anime show that we watched as nerd children? Do you remember that?
Yes.
There's a god. Anyway, sorry. We don't need to relive it. We all just lived it. Kami. Yes, I don't understand why. I finally got the name right. Like, Kami, if you're listening, we didn't get to say this on our other episode where we talked a little bit about Kami because we had a guest and we did not want to bother him with our thoughts on the title. But why is it different? I don't understand the difference. It's fine. It's not. I love your app.
Kami?
Very good. Yeah, Kami versus Kami. I don't. Like,
I mean,
you and I call
Kami
it
is
Kami,
God and Kami is an app. That is an
I
ed tech.
guess. I don't know. Whatever. It's fine. That's my thoughts. I just
The episode you're referring to, though, Josh, was episode 113, only a few episodes ago, with Steve Martinez from Kami. Thank you, Steve. Great episode, great times. He introduced us to Kami, and we've been paying a little more attention to it. I followed them on Twitter, seeing some of the postings, engaging with materials. But we just want to give a full episode spot here to it to highlight it from our side of the table. What happens, when you find a tool that's pretty much Miro and the infinite whiteboard space of Miro with, like, student engagement, Nearpod, minus the very K-12 elementary approach that Nearpod had, right? Like, some of the Nearpod tools are very cartoony. That's no problem. I don't hold that against them, but, like, some higher ed folks don't like, or corporate education too, right? I don't use it in corporate ed because it's very cartoony, very elementary.
Yeah.
That's Nearpod, right? Kami, like, I'm on their front page, I'm looking at their content, played around with it a little bit. It's straightforward. It's whatever you want to deliver. So if you have elementary students, you put elementary content into it. If it's adult learners, you put adult content into it. It's really adaptable to your audience that way. But, like, heck, audio, video, images, annotations, text boxes, drawings, shared collaboration space, comments, questions.
Yeah.
Is it a Swiss Army knife? Oh my.
A lot of media, a lot of cool stuff that you can add in there, commenting features, discussions back and forth. At the end of the day, it's like we've referenced Miro before, and that's a tool that Will and I are very familiar with. It does remind me kind of this idea of Miro with more interactions and education focus, and I think that's what I really like about it. It's got this cool kind of space that you can create and basically add the content that you want into here and create an interesting digital space for you and your students to work through stuff. Like Steve in the episode in 1 to 13 where we interviewed him shared a lot about how that tool basically helped him run doing flipped classroom work, like where he was able to put digital content in there and they were able to discuss it and work through it and all that stuff and bring it to class. And and put all this content and kind of this collaborative space where their students could comment back and forth and discuss, or they could comment on videos with that they were doing, and he could add questions into the page to go with video content to create kind of this dual environment that could help support flipped classroom. After he told us about it, both Will and I have played around with it a little bit, and I would agree, it's a cool tool. It gives you a lot of ability. Like I went in and created just basically like they call it a document, but I could create kind of an open platform that I wanted to document, size it whatever I wanted. And then I could mark it up. I could add content in there. The free version I have, I couldn't necessarily add in some of the media and stuff. I didn't use my education account to log in. That was a mistake. But I should have done that. Once you use that type of stuff, you can leverage that to get media, and it lets you do signatures, which is interesting. Like there's just a lot of interesting stuff in this tool. It's kind of like a document meets whiteboard tool in a way, and I really dig that, which is interesting because I will admit, Will, you and I, when we first looked at their website, were like, it looked like an annotation tool. Like when we were first going to talk to Steve, we hadn't really heard of Kami much. Right. We were like, oh, it's an annotation tool. And then we started talking to Steve, and we're like, well, this is not an annotation tool. And this is, I mean, you can annotate, but there's like a ton of other stuff that's involved in it. So it's a cool thing, and all the stuff is exportable that you put in there, so like your students can get it out of there. There's some analytics stuff related to Kami. It's cool. I really dig kind of the, like you joked, Will, it's a little bit of a Swiss Army knife vibe to the tool. They've got a lot of different features that you can use and leverage in there.
Literally on their features page, I tried to like quietly count to myself. I'm not a great counter. I tried to quietly count to myself, and I got a couple different numbers, a couple different times, because they have like 50 features, right? Their top tools and features, there's 9 featured there. Their all tools list is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times 3 is 24, 25 features there. There's, like we're up around 30 something features. Then they got another 20 features listed on this page. It's like 50 plus features. And it's everything from, a select tool and a hand tool. So it's navigation features. Those are simple. You could, I think it might be stretching to call them features, but it's good that they have them. To like, you can use Kami to record your screen straight into a Kami, right? Yeah. It has a screen capture comment feature. What? And then the limit's up to 20 minutes. Like, so I can't even get a free tool to do that for 20 minutes.
That's a pretty big limit. Like Will and I played with a lot of different free tools, and there are harder limits on video, and 20 minutes is pretty solid. Now, we haven't actually tested doing a 20-minute video, so I'd be curious how that would go. But if they're advertising, they can do it. Yeah, it could have some issues. What I really like about it too is
voice comments.
Yeah, they take accessibility pretty seriously too. So like you can use Kami to make accessible PDFs with text recognition. You can use it to dictate content. They have read aloud features for people who need those features in the tool. And it looks like they take the accessibility side pretty seriously. While we have not tested it, they do meet WCAG or
WCAG.
Yeah, WCAG. Yeah, there we go. 2.1 the guidelines, which is pretty good for a tool. There's plenty of education tools that Will and I have looked at that don't meet those guidelines. It surprises me more and more in this day and age how many apps are not taking accessibility seriously, and clearly they are making it a priority in what they do, which is really cool. So
I'm gonna highlight a couple of the top ones, right? So you already mentioned it's got text. It can do text reading, right? So anything that's text on the screen, it can read it aloud for someone who doesn't, who needs like a screen reader to help them. But it also has an equation editor. I really hope these are paired well, but like it's good to know that it can make mathematical equations. It should, let's hope, it should be able to read those mathematical equations too. Amazing. Next one down, we've got read aloud. That's always a great feature. It can read any text it can see. It's got voice typing. That's always helpful for someone who's not good at typing or can't physically type, etc. It's got dark mode. We love dark mode. It's got color palettes, which means it also has color control for like different color blindnesses and things like that. It's got open dyslexic and Lexen fonts. So it's got fonts for people who have struggle reading. It's got text recognition, touchscreen capability, compatibility. Like that's great. That's just a great laundry list of tools. And I hope they only continue to do more and more and more better. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I just, I'm not going to stretch here and say that Kami is a Kami. I'm not saying that Kami is the god of all ed tech, but there's my transition that I could have tried earlier. But
That would have,
it's
that would
pretty
have maybe
exciting.
applied a little bit better.
I liked
we're looking
it.
for feedback. Yeah, just throwing it out.
Just don't write me about that one. I don't care. I'm not
Don't
gonna.
write me anything. Yeah, I'll write into our review form that we have totally created.
Exactly.
Totally exists. Yeah, exactly. So go check it out. CamiApp.com. It's that simple. Go sign up for a free account. You can check it out, play around with the tool, see if you can leverage it. If you're curious, it does also have LMS integration, some other features like that. If you want to hear more about how somebody's used it and you didn't listen to episode 113 with Steve Martinez, I would recommend going to check out that episode because he talks a lot about how he used it to do flipped classroom work, and it really is what sold Will and I on checking it out and talking about it a little bit more. So go check it out. Next episode of the High Tech Podcast. I don't need sound effects. I am a sound effect. So boom. It is the start of season 5, folks. Next episode 116. We're not taking a break. This time we're jumping right into season 5 with episode 116. And you're going to have to check it out to see what happens, Will and I are going to be interviewing each other. I wish I could tell you more, but I don't know what Will's questions are for me. I know what
we're doing it blind, folks.
For Will. And then Will and I are going to recommend some apps. We might make a callback. We might find a new one. We might, who knows? We might not recommend an app and just leave. That's not true. That's not going to happen. But
that's not how we do things here, Josh.
Episode 116, start of season 5, and you will not want to miss season 5. There's some Ted Lasso coming. There's some exciting content. More guests, even more guests. We've got more people interested in the pod, and we're going to be bringing them on to talk about fun topics. See what I did there? I don't know what I did. Anyway. Also, we want to do a little promo here at the end. We, as you may know, I don't know if you know, if you skip this part on our episode, that's not cool. You shouldn't do that. But we are part of the Education Podcast Network. There are a lot of other podcasts a part of that network. We've had a few of them as guests on this podcast. We've been on some of their podcasts recently, other podcasts. So, and it's a great network with a lot of great people. Chris Nessie, who is the host of the House of Ed Tech, who is much cooler than we are. He is starting a podcast. So cool. He has started a podcast Behind the Mic, where he is actually interviewing a bunch of people in the Education Podcast Network to talk about how we create our podcasts, about stuff we've learned, things like that. Will and I are going to be on that series, and ours is releasing in November. I forget, has the podcast already started by this point? I don't remember if he's released stuff yet. We should have asked him.
Yes. No, you know what? As of today, August 15th, 2023.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
The trailer is up. So there's a spot on the Education Podcast Network, EDU Podcast Network.com. Behind the Mic has a podcast page on the network already, and there's a trailer out, and episode 1 is like out or coming out. By the time this episode airs, episode 1 will be out.
Episode 1 will be
out. Our
out.
episode releases in November 2023.
Yeah. So go check that out. If you're, again, at edupodcastnetwork.com, you can go check it out. If you're not trying to get there, just go to our website, hightechpod.us, and there is a link that will send you to the Education Podcast Network website. We will also link that in the show page for here. But go check it out. It's going to be a fun time. Will and I had a lot of fun. We had to talk about why we started the podcast, what we've learned. Had a little fun time with Chris, and there's already some great content being recorded. Encourage you to check it out if you're curious about ed tech or technology or just like podcasts, or you're like I need more Will and Josh in my life.
What's wrong with you? But thank you.
Yeah, but thank you. Yeah, we're there. Just a reminder, you can find us on Twitter and YouTube at High Tech Podcast. Any other social media networks that I didn't mention there, you can check them out on our website at hightechpod.us and find us through there. You can also find all of our episode pages where we put fun content, as well as information about how to leverage the apps that we talk about. So if you want to leverage the EdTech God, as Will calls it, Cammy, check out check out our episode page for this episode. There'll be some more content on there as well. You can also reach us at inbox@hightechpod.us if you'd like to be on the podcast, or just have ideas, want to tell us what you think, want to talk. I don't know. Like I have a coffee.
Folks, it's working. Okay. I just got
Yeah.
another email yesterday with somebody slipping into the inbox saying, "Hey, I'd love to come on the podcast. Want to talk about this." And guess what? It's about memes. And I can't wait for you to hear that episode.
We are very excited about that episode. That's been great. Another thing to look forward to in season 5 of the High Tech Podcast. So anyway, check us out there. Thank you again for joining us for another week as we continue to learn what it looks like. Words. Looks like to harness technology in the classroom, whether online or in person or in a back channel, however you'd like to do that.
Oh,
See ya.
see ya.